Democracy thrives in the vigilance of a free press, a guardian of truth in turbulent times. In this session, journalists Rajdeep Sardesai, Chander Mohan, Jyotsna Mohan join Manika to explore the ever evolving role of media in an ever changing political landscape.
Hello and welcome everyone to hopefully what will be a very engaging and interesting discussion today on April 23rd, World Book Day. I have with me senior journalists and authors Rajdeep Sardesai, Mr. Chander Mohan and Jyotsna Mohan. Thank you all three for being with us today. We're discussing the role of media in a democracy. Rajdeep, if I can start with you straight off the bat, 2024, the election that surprised India. When I read the book, I recognized, for everyone here, Rajdeep was my first editor. So I have seen him reporting firsthand. So it does draw on a lot of your frontline journalism. Speak to me, did you during, and I know, what's been happening in the landscape, but could you feel that tension between the media's role as an objective reporter of facts versus its role as a platform for debate or even as an agenda setter?
First of all, thank you very much, Manika, and wish you, Jyotsna, Chander Mohanji, a very happy World Book Day. Look, the fact is that even while writing the chapter on the media in my book, 2024, the election that surprised India, I was frankly a little caught in a dilemma because I wondered whether, to what extent could I turn the searchlight on the media when I am in the belly of the beast, so to say. And because I am in mainstream media, could I be honest about what's going wrong, or how are we failing democracy, or the pressures that the media is under, or dare I say the capture of the media by the state and governments? There was a sense that how far can you go when you're actually part of that same media establishment? And I think that, Manika, is what is really something that I've been struggling to grapple with. That to what extent can you push the boundaries in turning the searchlight on yourselves? Because we in the media hold everyone else accountable in a democracy, as we should, whether it's the judiciary, whether it's the legislature, whether it's the executive, whether it's civil society. Do we turn the searchlight often enough on ourselves and our failings? And I think if we did so, we might find an answer to some of the questions that you've raised initially about the role of the media in a democracy. Are we really ensuring that sunlight is available in those areas of darkness, and thereby informing the public? Or are we simply becoming foot soldiers and enablers of those who are in the establishment? I think that's the fundamental question which I've tried to answer in that chapter, but maybe someone needs to write a wider book, as in a way Jyotsna and Chander Mohanji have written on their experiences with the newspaper.
So, like you say, again, Pratap, a defiant newspaper written by Chander Mohanji and Jyotsna. It's very interesting because their newspaper is playing the role of an activist, a freedom fighter. It's taking on that battle of independence on behalf of its people. So I wanted to know, what was it that the two of you decided to write this book at this time? I mean, the paper existed in those times, it's a story of those times. What is it that made the two of you come together and say, okay, let's write this book, this is the time for it?
Well, Manika, the papers had closed down. And there's a beautiful line by Sahir Ludhianvi. जिस अफसाने को अंजाम तक ले जाना हो नामुमकिन, उसे खूबसूरत मोड़ देकर छोड़ना बेहतर. The story that you cannot take to the climax, better to leave it at a beautiful turning. So we thought this would be a good turning, a good closure, because we had closed down the book and there were a lot of questions of asking, why have you closed down, after 98 years? So this was what I think inspired us to write this book. Plus, I mean, this is the larger question. The circumstances have changed. The media's role has changed. The powers that be have changed. Everything had changed in the last few years. So it was best to write it down.
Jyotsna, was there something in particular that you felt? Was there a specific trigger outside of that it's a story that needed to be told, an observation? Because there is a lot of, in the storytelling of Pratap, there is some sort of reflection on what is happening in the media today.
So Monica, I like my father said that, we wanted to put it down, and you asked about the timing, but I think there was one other personal conversation that was going on at home for a really long time. And that kind of took us about, I think, a couple of years at least to come to this story. And that was the Punjab story. And again, that was the story where, because the family was targeted, my father was hesitant, but more than my father, it was my mother who was, very hesitant to come back into the spotlight. And so that is the story that, we resisted speaking about for the longest time, because they've been really scarred. And there hasn't been a closure to that story. Again, we were the media, and we were the media that was targeted for speaking out during the Punjab story. So for the longest time, my mother absolutely refused. My father said, look, I'm not ready. And if I will write this story, I will write the whole story. Then I will not hold back. And this is what we've done. So ultimately, I think that persuasion also took me time, because, I needed my father to reach this place where he was comfortable enough to want to speak the whole story. And I think that in itself took us to this place where we are today, with the entire story again of a newspaper that started so long back before partition, and yet, it remained troubled even after fighting for the country's independence. And I don't know if my parents have got some kind of a closure after writing it, but I think it was cathartic to write this as well.
It's interesting. We're talking about books and newspapers. And again, at least Rajdeep, Jyotsna, you and I, we started our journalism when there was one news bulletin at 9 o'clock at night, first on Doordarshan, and then it became Star News. And then, of course, these 24-hour news channels came. Rajdeep, in your book, you also sort of talk about these very interesting methods that have been used in terms of communication strategies or technology that was used in election. I just wanted to touch upon that when it comes to media, and now traditional media somewhere seems to have disappeared, right? Everyone's a journalist or everyone's giving out information. How does that now play into this narrative of holding the powers to be, to question them? Or, I mean, how does technology now come into play as a disruptor, or does it enable? I wanted to get your take on that.
Manika, thank God for these digital revolutionaries. The fact is, they may not conform by the traditional classical definition of journalism, where you just gave the news of the day and left it at that. You could call them activists, you could call them opinion makers, but the truth of the matter is, thank God for them, because all the failings of the mainstream legacy media necessitated the rise of these digital revolutionaries to offer some space to alternate voices, to offer some space to anti-establishment voices. The irony is, you just mentioned that there was a time when there was just one half-hour bulletin. Today, you have almost more than 400 24/7 news channels, but they're mostly conformist. Across this country, most of these channels will be in a breaking news cycle where, and many of them have, like it or not, become lapdogs of whoever is in power, whether at the center or the state. So if people are searching for alternate opinions, they get it from these digital revolutionaries. So you can call them disruptors, but thank God for the disruption, because if there was no disruption in a country as diverse as ours, your media information sources would be rather limited, because the real truth of the matter is the government of the day manages large sections of the mainstream media and forces them almost to simply toe the official narrative. So I see them as not just as disruptors, but as digital revolutionaries, whether it's the Dhruv Ratis, the Ravish Kumars, the Ajit Anjums, and many in regional media. There are those who are Dalit, running sort of Dalit-driven Ambedkarite websites. Good for them, like Newsbeat. Good for them, because we need more of that. We need more plurality and diversity in our media. It's not a solution to the crisis of journalism. I don't think you can solve the crisis with digital revolutionaries, but at least for now, it provides alternative platforms for those looking to listen to other voices.
But Rajdeep, and I want to ask Chander Mohanji this, and Jyotsna, at a time in India where stand-up comics are being arrested for jokes and for satire, and very often it seems that they're the only ones really standing up. There is such a parallel drawn from what is happening today to what Chander Mohanji and Jyotsna, you put in your book about censorship, and how the British government came down very heavily on Pratap. So if you tell me a little bit about that, about the parallels of that time and now, do you see similarities? What is happening?
That time was different. You were fighting for a cause, and then you accepted the punishment. Okay, ठीक है, जो हुआ है, whatever. What is happening today, as you said, what's putting people in behind bars for satire or for writing something? It's not only by the central government, but also by some state governments. West Bengal is very intolerant.
Ji.
There's some other state governments also, because they want to manage the media. So it's a different atmosphere. In fact, I wanted to ask a question, put a question to Rajdeep. He's written in his book, in the introduction, he talks about cheerleaders of those in power. And one sentence is there, fear is the operative word. Is this sentence the operative sentence of the book? Is this the operative sentence of the Times? Fear is the operative word. Is the media scared? Rajdeep, if we can...
Chander Mohanji, if I'm honest, and I mean, I think there's a sentence a little before that where I say about the fear we have of the country moving from a democracy to a quasi-autocracy. And since the British were also mentioned by you, Chander Mohanji, I sometimes say, Angrez chale gaye, apni aulad chhod gaye. Just like the British used the police almost as their private army, so do state governments in the center today. And they weaponized every law, whether it's the Prevention of Money Laundering Act, whether it's sedition. I mean, sedition was used by the British to arrest freedom fighters.
Absolutely.
And sedition is brought back now in the Bharatiya Nyaya Sahita. It's even more draconian. And, when I see young journalists having their laptops seized, their phone call, their mobile phone seized by the special cell of the Delhi police when when a news website was NewsClick was raided. I mean, I ask myself, is this what would have happened in British times to those who would write, who had these brave independent newspapers? And maybe there are parallels. And therefore, yes, I do think fear is the key, because it has a chilling. You just think about this, Chander Mohanji. When a channel like NDTV, when a network like NDTV finds its owners being put under investigation simply because they want to be, the government wants to intimidate them into submission, it has a chilling effect on the entire profession. Because if it's happening to a big channel or a big network, what chance does a smaller media house have? So I think, yes, fear is certainly a key. Agencies like Enforcement Directorate have been misused to in a way spread this atmosphere of fear amongst media houses.
I actually, well, we're all journalists here, so Joe, pitch in any time you
No,
want.
I just wanted to add one line, that in our family, we've always just said that, we've always, as the newspapers, always been, stood very staunchly anti-establishment, come who may be. And sometimes foolishly so, because, there's a cost, right? I mean, that there's a financial cost to it. But in today's environment, I mean, like we said, maybe it's better off that it's shut. But again, with the fear that there is, how many people could afford to be what we were then?
That's true. But Rajdeep and Chander Mohanji, Jyotsna, again, apart from fear, that's, fear of getting arrested, going to jail, there is now this whole fear of actually being out of a job as well. Outside of TRPs, entire channels are now dependent on government advertising. The model is so skewed that outside of advertising, in a country where people will go and buy really expensive brands, but no one's really willing to pay for actual factual news, how does then one move forward? And I wanted to also sort of come a little later to young journalists and where they're going, but if you could just talk about that.
Very quickly, I think you hit the nail on the head, because I think one of the real challenges is the business model. It's the business model of mainstream media, whether it's television, whether it's newspapers. It's also the business model that digital standalone networks have. It's what independent journalists face. There isn't a viable commercial model that sustains quality journalism unless, as you rightly said, people are willing to pay for good journalism. If you don't pay, I mean, I keep saying this, if you pay peanuts, you'll get monkeys. If you're not willing to invest in subscription, in creating a subscriber-driven model, then how do you promote quality journalism? Look at the cover price of our top newspapers. They were priced in a manner to price out all competition. I mean, that's hardly the way you will build a world-class subscription-driven model like the New York Times is today. So I think these are also some of the questions. The government of the day, whichever it is in some form or the other going to now look to emasculate the media. I think the present government at the center has set a terrible example. But there will be those engaged in whataboutery who will say Rajiv Gandhi defamation bill, Indira Gandhi emergency, all of which is true. But the truth of the matter is, if the central government was able to work out a relationship where they gave the media far more space, then perhaps some of those problems could be obviated. But the business model problem is, I believe, a larger crisis facing the media. Sorry.
Chander Mohan ji, aap kuch keh rahe the.
What is disturbing is what is going to happen to this profession. I have young journalists coming to me and asking कि जी हम पत्रकार बन जाएं या journalist बन जाएं. I have no answer for them. They come with passion, idealistic, passionate. हम बड़े ये कर देंगे, हम वो कर देंगे, and I know the reality. I know the limits today. I can't sort of, in all honesty, tell them, please join journalism. Because I know journalism has been, controlled now. That media that has lost its charm, rightly spoken about NDTV. We all used to look up to NDTV. अब वो charm नहीं रहा media का. That passion is gone. That fearlessness is gone. Now it's like a business, like any other business.
And Manika, just like Rajdeep said in the beginning, everybody also thinks that there are journalists today. So that's the other thing, right? I understand the digital model, but everybody can pick up a phone, anybody can speak, and that's an opinion, and that sometimes comes out as misinformation. But how many fact checkers can there be?
There is also this whole question of, Rajdeep's touched upon it, that everybody's doing it. Globally, if you see, Mr. Trump is sort of, being a master at it. And I think the world leaders, or at least the strongmen of the world, are learning from each other. And it's here to stay. But what is the way forward? And I wanted to ask all of you this. What is the way forward? from those who've seen the good times, as all of us have here, where we could question, we didn't always fear, you could do your job. To what Chander Mohan ji said, I also consult with a couple of universities, and I always tell young people who want to do journalism saying, are you sure? Are you sure you're ready for it? Also because there are two sides to it. Either they have stars in their eyes and they think they're all going to be anchors, or they don't know what the reality of the job is in terms of how demanding it is, or how controlled it is. So what is the way forward? Chander Mohan ji, if we could start with you.
I don't see, at the moment, I don't see any way forward. I mean, the whole atmosphere has been initiated. You look at Jawaharlal Nehru, he used under the pen name Chanakya. He used to write against himself. Don't make him a dictator. We don't need Caesars here. That kind of leadership won't come. His daughter was not like him. His grandson was not like him. I mean, the present dispensation is not at all like him. But that kind of, atmosphere, that kind of visionary leadership has gone. So I don't see any way. I admire Rajdeep for what he's faced a lot of problems, and he still continues. I mean, what one can do is that wherever one is sitting, one should continue whatever one is doing, so as much as you can.
Rajdeep, is it also, and sort of, I just want to, take it, is it also a lack of what we call a good, credible opposition? Is it that as well? Or is that just now become the standard line, ki, koi nahi milta to ye bol do?
Look, the lack of a political opposition in this country is a political problem. I don't think that's the problem of journalism. I think the problem of journalism is what we touched upon. One is the way the state and institutions that should be acting as checks and balances have failed in their constitutional duties. A journalist, if he tells truth to power, should be protected by institutions. He should not then be subject to a situation where the process becomes the punishment, as it has with a news click, or indeed with an NDTV, or with so many other organizations where independent young journalists have had FIRs registered against them for exposés. It's almost as if doing investigations is criminalized. So I think there is that problem. And there is the problem of the business model that we also referred to. Is there a glimmer of hope in all of this, Manika? My sense is technology for me is the only hope, because technology is the ultimate disruptor. Already we've seen, the fact is people's eyeballs are shifting rapidly. Everybody's consuming news on their mobile phones or on Reels or Instagram. And therefore that disruption may well force traditional journalistic models to also relook at themselves. How do you engage better with readers? How do you engage better with viewers? That's what I hope will come out of this. I still believe, maybe the hope is flickering at the moment, but I still believe there is space for quality. You put out quality out there on a sustained basis. I do believe that there is a large audience out there that is hankering for it in a country as large as ours. So I think that's the challenge and the opportunity. Maybe I'm a dreamer, but that's the way it is. As Chander Mohan says, kabhi kabhi lage raho. You just stick to your ground in the hope that some things will change for the better. I am not as pessimistic as he is, but I don't think there is also too much to be optimistic about, beyond the fact that technology will disrupt traditional models of information, and is already doing so.
So hopefully that continues and sort of strengthens. But Jyotsna, as someone who writes opinion pieces, in this era of fear, do you feel that you self-censor? Is there sometimes that thing of holding back? I wanted to ask you that, because I know you sort of write opinion pieces on a lot of things, and I know you're somebody who takes a strong stand. So is there that sense of, let me hold back on this one?
Many times. Not just once, many times, Manika. And it's a bit unfortunate because, then I go and I kind of vent it because I'm not comfortable with it. but I know that there is sometimes no other way, or sometimes, you know, I try. So it's a bit of a give and take. Also try and push the boundaries, but the scissor does come if I push the boundaries sometimes a bit too much. So I think, you know, we're all trying that little, you know, take a step. Sometimes it's one step ahead, two steps back. Sometimes it's the other way around. But I think in our little systems or our ecosystems, we're all trying in different ways to keep speaking out, you know, and being flexible with it. I think that there would have been a time where I would have absolutely hated this idea of self-censoring. But where we are today, I think that sometimes there's no choice. You know, either I can just keep quiet and not have anything out and not have any say, or I give in that little bit and say whatever I can along the way. So it's a bit of a, you know, you have to be a little bit flexible as well in this environment. I mean, I look, my father, he's in his late 70s. I'm making him do videos. Rajdeep is doing videos on Instagram, taking a little space. So, you know, we're all trying to find that little space, because I think that's the only way to keep going.
You know, you just mentioned it, Jyotsna. A colleague of mine is making me do Instagram reels. You know, I'd done a long video and he said, "Sir, no one will watch the long video. Please do an Instagram reel of 90 seconds." And he was probably right.
90
but look,
seconds, Rajdeep, it's got to be under 60 seconds now. That's the
oh,
thing.
is that
It's under 60.
look, but
yeah, my father did it. I told him, I said, it's too long, cut it, send a shorter one. So we're all doing pretty much the same thing.
So, you know, in all of this, as the government sort of tries to shut a lot of us down, there are problems in the financial aspects of it. Tell me, but as a community, as journalists, or even as a society, are we not sort of, are we supporting each other enough? And that's a question I also wanted to get out, that, you know, when we talk about a media's role in a democracy, what about the media's role in sort of becoming a community? Or, you know, do we support each other enough? Because one sees it's almost as if, at least with the big players, it's, you know, somehow there's a sense of happiness when somebody gets cut down or there's something bad happens. So, I
want to give you a hopeful answer to that, based on a real life incident. Only last week, a journalist in Assam was arrested and then rearrested, and I was very, very heartened to see that so many journalists of Assam hit the streets, protested to the point, and asked tough questions to the chief minister, who gave this bizarre statement that online journalists are not journalists. The individual has now been released, but I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that journalists, his fellow journalists, stood by him. Now, that may not happen in all instances, but when it does, I think it does have an impact. I do believe that journalists as a community, if we stuck together and raised our voices when there was a brazen misuse of power, I still believe that those in power will be forced to listen. It's just about us having the courage of our own convictions, which we in many cases lack at the moment. But I'm delighted that, you know, this young journalist was released, and I had just put out a tweet in his support, along with a few other journalists, Ravish Kumar, others put out tweets in his support, and it has had an impact. The Editors Guild came in, they put out a press release. So I think if journalists are able to at least stand up for the, as you rightly said, for fellow journalists in the line of fire, especially in those in smaller towns who have less protection, I think we will have done a signal service to the profession.
Right. So I think we're going to coming to an end. I wanted to end with all three of you giving our viewers one reason why they should go buy the book and read it. So Chander Mohanji, if I can start with you, what would you like to tell our viewers why they should buy Pratap and have a read?
With Pratap is in the history of India, practically pre-independence and later on, and how to fight powers that be. We fought the British, we fought the emergency, then we fought the militancy in Punjab and paid a huge, huge price when 2 people died in our office. And it also carries the life story of my father, who was a comrade of Bhagat Singh, and he was in the same jail as Bhagat Singh on the day Bhagat Singh was hanged. So the book carries all that and much more, and how and once when censorship was imposed on us in British times, the person who came to fight for us was Jawaharlal Nehru, no less. So, and it's a very interesting conversation between him and the Premier of Punjab at that time, both accusing each other of arrogance. So all that is in that book.
Joe?
Because, you know, Manika, sometimes regional stories get buried as well, right? I mean, we're not Delhi, we were not Bombay, and yet, you know, we've got a story that many others don't have. You know, whether it's history or in this environment, how, you know, how it was always about the truth, how it was always about speaking up for the wrongs. And, you know, that there's just, like my dad said, Jawaharlal Nehru, or, you know, the history of our newspaper. I think I've been privileged to be born into that family, and I would love to just share it, saying it very simply.
Rajdeep?
You know, first of all, congratulations to Chander Mohan and Jyotsna Mohan for putting that story out there, because I think these are the stories of India that need to be told in a country as diverse as ours.
Thank you.
You know, my book is in a sense a part of a trilogy chronicling what has been a dramatic and turbulent period in India's history. And I think it needs to be told in an unapologetic, no holds barred, objective manner, so that people know what is happening to our constitutional and electoral democracy. I mean, that is my only purpose. I genuinely believe that that book writing is books are a window to that world in a way that a TV show or an Instagram certainly can never be, because books will last. Books will last generations, I hope, and people must know even today or 20 years from now what happened in the last 15-20 years. So, you know, this is a window to a world, and I've tried to make sense of these dramatic events around us. So yeah, that's a good reason to read, because it fills in the gap that I know that TV news, of which I am a professional, can never fill in. That I'm very convinced that we can never do what books can do to actually widen your knowledge. I genuinely believe that.
Right. Thank you.
Manika, I just want a sentence for Rajdeep. Rajdeep, I'm going nearly finish reading your book, and must compliment you that you have been brutally objective, totally frank. So I would use the word brutally, because sometimes I wonder, okay, ye kya likh raha hai? But congratulations for all that.
Thank you. And I think it comes from what you've said, that I think the only way to write the stories is to be brutally frank. Because,
otherwise, there's no point writing.
Yeah, there's no point writing. I'm glad you've told these stories, because there is no other way to tell a story. You can pussyfoot around a TV program in the interest of balance. He says, she says. When you write a book, you've got to tell it as you see it. And that's what I think all of us have tried.
So no pussyfooting around in these books. Joe, hold up Pratap. Rajdeep, do you have yours? Hold it up.
Rajdeep always has it.
I normally always have it, but I don't have it at the moment.
Oh my God, Rajdeep, imagine that.
Terrible.
Yeah,
But
no.
Happy World Book Day, everyone. Go buy books, like Rajdeep said, more than ever, this is the time to read. So go buy these books, buy others, read, and thank you very much for
I'm going to show you something though, since I don't have the book.
Yes.
I don't know whether you can see this. This is, somebody just sent me this Ghibli. This is
the Ghibli art of the book, yes.
Holding the book.
Rajdeep, hold it higher.
Hold it higher, Rajdeep, yeah.
Okay, this is
so
a
there
Ghibli.
You have technology and books. That's the meeting point.
Okay, Ghibli of me holding the book. So that's the new word.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Manika. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Manika. Thank you, Jyotsna.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Thank you, Rajdeep.